Sorry, we're not trying to bash books here, but we are.
But that's our MO. We give you honest reviews only here at Red Wine Reads.
Period.
Welcome to Red Wine Reads, a community of book lovers talking about our favorite and not so favorite books while pouring a glass or two of wine. I'm your host, Jenna Weston, and with me today is Sierra Marshall. Now, before we start, I should warn you that we do spoil the endings of the book's review, so if you don't like that, then please go finish the book and come right back to this episode. Now, here's what you can expect from every episode. We start with a super short 60-second summary and some quick facts to get you oriented with the book that we will be reviewing for the episode. Then we will answer this simple question, would you recommend this book? We will answer it with a yes or a no, and give some supporting facts as to why. Then we will spend the majority of the episode arguing why or why not we would recommend this book. Then we will end the show with final ratings and pairings, where we will pick drinks, TV shows, movies, and other books that might pair well with today's read. Each episode also hosts its own drinking game, so whatever your drink of choice, wine, cocktails, mocktails, coffee, water, we hope that you'll sip along with us. Today we will be reading and reviewing Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Maehrer. Sierra chose this book because she had actually received the book as a gift and was a fan of Hannah on TikTok, where this series originated. Hannah created this idea for Assistant to the Villain by creating a series of TikToks acting as if she were the assistant to a evil villain. And then thus this book was created and she ended up writing it. This is the first of a trilogy. The second book is out now, and after reading this book, I have to say, I'm very tempted to go read the second. But every time I go to buy it, I think, maybe not. But after our conversation, I'm even more tempted to go and buy the second book. So we both really enjoyed it. There are some qualms that we will get into with this book, but overall, a fun little read, especially for spooky season. So, without further ado, let's pull some corks and get reading. This week we read Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Maehrer. Sierra, welcome to another episode of Red Wine Reads. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Living the dream, my friend. We are here today to talk about Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole. Is it Maehrer?
I'm going to say yes. Maehrer?
Maehrer. I'm going to say Maehrer. Today, I've already given Sierra enough shit about it, but she is not drinking anything.
Oops, it's the middle of the day.
Oops. But East Coast time means it's always 5 o'clock for me, so I have made myself here a nice espresso martini. It will make sense as we get talking about the book, but there is a coffee substance in the book, and I thought I would take some inspiration from that to create my drink. So speaking of drinks, drinking game for this episode, I only have 2 rules because for some reason it feels like there's not going to be a lot of things we touch on twice with this book.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So one is drink every time we say Kingsley, and it will probably be said in said accent, and drink anytime Sierra or I say ugh in frustration. Because I feel like we do that a lot in any episode.
We probably do.
Just the ugh. Well, anytime you hear that. All right, let's get into our 60-second summary.
God, Jesus. Okay. There you go. There's one already.
There you go. Drink.
Okay. Okay. Here's my summary. Okay, my summary is we meet this character named Evie. She is currently without a job and she is searching for work. So she happens to go to a job fair where she ends up giving away a job because she is just the kindest soul ever. And she ends up feeling hopeless and walking through the woods, which she should be afraid of because there is an evil villain who lives in these woods. However, she just decides to not give a crap and walk through the woods. When that happens to her, she bumps into said villain, and he tries to keep her from getting mixed into all of his crap, and happens to, like, I guess show her his castle, and then offers her a job because she happens to mention to him, hey, I'm looking for a job and I'm without one and I need money for my family. And so they continue that on, and I guess shenanigans ensues along with some longing glances. Sure.
That was great.
Thanks.
Shenanigans ensue and longing glances. That's all all this book is. So,
I mean, there's some evil, I guess, too, but
yes.
some nefarious goings-ons.
I think it was perfect.
Thank you.
You got it. All right. Well, let's get into some quick facts. So, Assistant to the Villain was published in 2024. It has a 3.9 out of 5 on Goodreads, a 3.9 out of 5 on the Story Graph. This was all over Bookstagram, all over Book Talk. Started as a series on TikTok before Hannah took it and then wrote a book, aspiring, kind of tailing off of her fictional series that she had created on TikTok. In, taking the stance of, if she were said assistant to a villain, what would those interactions look like? The second book is out now in the series. What is it?
Apprentice to the Villain.
Apprentice. I was like, associate? So that one is out now, and a third book is in the works. So stay tuned for that. Not much about our author, since this is her debut novel, but she is a famous TikToker. And that is how this series came to be.
And that is how I heard of it, because I follow her and I thought her series was so cute.
Yes. Yeah, were there any other, any other things that led you to choosing this book for the podcast?
I had gotten it for a Christmas gift. And so I was just like, I really do need to read it. I want to read it. And I, again, just love her Instagram and everything, or her TikTok and her Instagram. And I just think she's as cute as pie. And so I was following the series as she, continued to post. But then I was like, oh, she came out with a book. So just had to read it.
I love it. Let's get into it. So Sierra, would you recommend this book? Yes, no, few supporting facts.
Yes, I would recommend this book. I think it's just genuinely a good lighthearted book. Makes you feel all sorts of things, even though there's not a lot of smut in it. Obviously, there's actually no smut in it, but it's super, super cute, and it gives you those good lighthearted feelings, especially for this time of year. I think Halloween is coming up, the fall, and I don't know, I always just associate that with fairy tales and things like that. And so for me, it was the perfect read for the season that I'm in right now.
I love that. I said yes as well. I would recommend this book. It, again, was fun and lighthearted. I did really love the relationship between the villain and Evie. I think it was very cute, very fun. Overall, I definitely wanted more from this first book, but I think that I keep going and almost buying the second one, and then I'm like, I don't have time. You shouldn't buy this book. But I keep almost buying it because I'm I really just want to continue. I want to continue living in this world with these characters. So I will probably eventually, on my 5th trip to Barnes & Noble, pick it up. So yeah. But yes, overall, definitely would recommend this book. Let's get into what we loved. So what sparkled? What did you just eat up about this book?
I think she did a really good job at creating chemistry between Tristan and Evie. Because, you could get lost in all the cheese, which it is quite cheesy. And, that's what we love about romance books, though. So I think she really did a really good job at creating, this tension without it being, oh my god, she was a fucker boss. You know what I mean? Which is, of course, inappropriate in many ways, but we're rooting for it in this one because it's a romance, so why wouldn't we? I also think she did a really good job at creating characters that we would just, like, fall in love with. Yeah. Kingsley is such a cute little character. I love his little crown and, like, how he, like, writes little notes at, like, the most awkward of times. And I come to love, like, Blade and how he interacts with Dragon, and then, like, you're thinking he's the villain at one point, and then you just are like, oh, he's just a dumb boy. He's just so dumb and so sweet, and he just wants to be with animals all day. Yep. Creatures, and I just think that's the sweetest thing. He's just our little himbo of the book. And so I cannot, like, there's so much I loved and enjoyed, and I think she actually did a really good job at creating, like, suspense in certain situations, and also, like, throwing us a curve at the end of the book. So
yeah,
always looking forward to that.
Yes, I think it was I mean, I second almost everything you said. Like, the characters were so good in this. Like, that's, like, really the main reason. Like, it gave me the same feeling in the sense of, like, reading The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi, in the sense of, like, this cast of characters is giving, like, throwing 100 miles an hour. They're so good. They're, like, I just want to stay with them forever. And I really did think that she was going to take Blade, and I was like, that would have just been, like, ugh, whatever.
It's so on the nose.
Yeah.
So.
And then it didn't, and then you're like, oh, okay. And then I can't get over him, because I'm like, he's too nice. He's too, like, golden retriever, but I guess that's just, like, who he is. It's great. I loved the dynamic between Becky and Evie. I think that is my favorite tension point of the entire book. I just think that they almost have more chemistry than the villain and Evie. And I love it. But I do, like, I think the idea itself too is super original. Like, what would an office setting look like when your boss is, like, killing people and, like, causing havoc in a village? That's super fascinating.
Right. Well, it's also, like, super interesting to think, like, obviously they have horses and carriages and different things like that. She has a notebook, though, and she's, like, taking inventory, and I think that's so funny. It's just, like, that mixture of, like, incorporating, like, somewhat real-world problems or, like, real-world scenarios, but then you're throwing them into this fantasy realm where, like, they don't have modern technology. They rely on magic, and they have horses and carriages, and they have swords that they fight with instead of guns, and it's altogether just so cute and fun, and I mean, it was such a good read, I think.
Yeah. I think, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of, like, in Shrek 2, I think it is, where they're going through, like, the fairy godmother's like, production, what is it, like a distribution center, like her factory.
Yeah,
that's what it is, her factory. And she has, like, you know, they're taking inventory of all the potions. They have, like, the huge vats, like, going, and it's like, that is exactly what I imagined like, this is looking like, where you have that mix of, like, your office space, but also, like, this is medieval vibe as well. And, like, you know, Evie just wants to wear pants, but it's like, oh, I should wear a dress, like,
but it'll draw attention to me in the village. I think that's so cute. Or like severed heads are just, like, up on, like, held up on stakes or something like that. Like, it's just so funny to think, like, what would your life be like if you were, like, working for a fairy tale villain? And I think it's just such a fun and creative concept.
Yeah. I will, like, Kingsley was my favorite, like, character of almost any book I've ever read, just because, like, he had such a little part to play, but, like, came in and, like, every scene was, like, captured the scene.
Right.
Like, you have it. You have him, like, on the, you know, on the carriage, and he's technically a prisoner, so it's like, like he's also trying to like plan this escape by himself. And so he's like on the carriage and he just holds up the like help sign.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, Kingsley, after my own heart.
He's just a good little comic relief when you're like, ooh, detention. Or yes. I think like specifically that kind of scene where like Tristan and her are like finally getting to know each other, and she finds out like, oh, that's his name, and she's like, why would you just tell my sister your name? Like, that's actually crazy. And I mean, let's get into the Tristan of it all. I think he's a great villain, but not too... And I think it's really interesting, because at the end, he's like, I don't know what kind of morally gray kind of pedestal you've put me on, but I am the villain. And I'm just like, but are you? Which is so great, because he treats her, like, so well. And along with, like, his whole staff, other than his interns. But even then, he even said he's brought it down to, like, once a month, which I'd say is pretty good for a villain.
Yeah. Oh my God, the interns of it all made me laugh so hard. I was like, that is so funny. Like, literally chasing them in the woods.
Yes. But also, like, the fact that Tristan himself was an intern, I think, like, that kind of cracked me up too, because I'm like, full circle. Like, he is now the one chasing around interns. However, his situation was a little bit more sticky. Yeah. I would say, in the situation he was put in as an intern, but still so cute.
Yeah, I will say, like, I think he himself made for a great villain. Mm-hmm. I think his backstory, like his villain story, wasn't as strong as I would have liked it to be. I actually almost wish it would have leaned a little bit heavier into the satire of it all, and like he was born to villains, and like that was his like upbringing,
his legacy.
Yeah, because I think I don't know, like I feel like, I guess we're gonna get into what fell flat with this, but it got confusing for me. It got like very convoluted when it started going into his backstory and with the king and like how that came to be. I still don't really know the role of these dragon things. I don't even remember what they're called. But
they have such a weird name. I was like, I think I'm guessing this whole time what their name is.
Yeah.
So, what I gather is that the venom can possibly create a cure for like any ailment.
Right, okay.
And but the female, I'm assuming it has to come from the female, but the female was not creating venom when she was by herself. So they needed both of them in order to...
And Tristan doesn't want that in the hands of the king.
Because he'd probably misuse it.
Okay.
I'm assuming. Like, I think that's the funny part of this is, like, everyone's like, he's the villain. And you've seen, like, through the king's actions. Clearly not.
Yeah.
Clearly not. Like,
yeah.
He, like, the villain is only killing bad people. Mm-hmm. Like, he even said he spares women, he spares innocents. And I think mostly just innocents. I don't really think he would have a problem killing an evil woman. But anyway, I digress. And I think that's the funny thing of it all, is you can clearly see that Tristan's not indeed the villain, even though he will play one. It's kind of like that kind of scenario where, like, if you want to make me your villain, I'll be your villain.
Yeah.
Like, and I think we've all kind of experienced that with, like, past friends or past relationships, and, like, you have someone who's, like, going around being like, oh, well, this person did this, that, and whatever, and just spreading rumors and everything, and you come to a point where you're just like, okay, and I'm your villain then, whatever. Like, you just kind of stop caring about what everyone else thinks. But that also builds a wall, and Evie is just so good at breaking down that wall.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Thank you, Sarah, for my fantasy clarification corner, as we have in all these episodes. I think that, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Because I think that just like really confused me. But I will say, going back to the things we liked, I did like how we jumped between her POV and his POV, because I think you get and like I like how Tristan's weren't as prominent. Like I think like getting one here and there was like perfect, because you do get that, you know, feeling of he, like, you have him turn this corner from being like completely villainized to being like, her hair looks so beautiful in the sunlight. Oh my god, what am I thinking? Like,
it makes you like giggle and kick your feet, and you're like, hee.
Yeah, I loved it. I think like that was so good and so cute, and I think like that added just a little layer to it all, to like humanize him a little bit more than just like Evie saying what she wants to say about him, but like actually getting his POV is like a whole nother game.
Well, I think even like, for instance, like at the beginning when we kind of like found out like, oh, he's scared of the dark, I was like, you're joking. I was like, the villain is scared of the dark. He has like shadow powers and he's scared of the dark. Okay, Mr. Big Man. And then, like, come to find out, he actually has a real legit reason to be scared of the dark. And then I was like, oh, which I love to do with like all of my favorite male characters, like through anything that I've read, anything that I watch, I always love them to be a little wounded. And so like finding out this, like, oh, he was locked in a basement and they would just come in and randomly beat him for a month. I mean, mind you, a month is not that long, but he was young. So like, clearly, and this is someone who you're like trusting to run a country, trusting to like steer you in the right direction, and then without like clearly knowing him and seeing like, oh, he wants to be better for himself, he wants to do better, he had all these like high hopes and aspirations, just as someone to be like, well, your powers are evil. And like there's no proof of that, like, as we've seen, like they're just powers, they're not like good or bad, in my opinion. And I think that's like true to a lot of other stories that we've seen, but I think like it's a really good theme to kind of base a book around too.
I also do like you're saying, like relating it to a lot of these other kind of romantic-y type vibes. Like, I kind of do love that this book isn't like I know this is gonna sound so bad, but I do kind of love that it's not Evie like coming into her own power in the sense of like, you know, her finding out she has this you know, unreal, you know.
I literally was waiting for it. I actually was. And maybe she does eventually, but like in specifically the first book, I think like really great.
Yeah, because I don't think it needs it. I think it like it almost thrives off of having like her be so normal in the sense of like, you know, she's just living her life, and like the villain has this like incredible power that's like weighing down on him, and she's just like, I'm just here for the vibes,
right?
But like
she's like, what a great office, I love working here.
Which I love. Let's talk about the dad of it all.
Ugh. There you go.
Yeah.
There's one.
Yeah. There it is.
Drink up.
Because that was a twist I did not see coming.
I didn't either, which was really great. But also, like, I kind of didn't like him the whole time. It's very much like in ACOTAR, like Feyre's dad. I felt very similarly to him. Just kind of seeing, like, doesn't care to help. Because, like, there are days where he's, like, up on his feet, like, doing all the things. And for a second, you feel sympathy for him. And I think that's the point. Is, like, you are supposed to feel sympathetic for this man. But then, like, she kept saying, like, well, he had never really been present when my mother was around before all of this happened. He wasn't really a present person. And then it's like you slowly, like, at once, this is specifically when she's telling the story, like, kind of piecing everything together at the end. You're kind of slowly being like, oh, everything makes sense. Like, he is a terrible person. I'm like, and that kind of calls to question, like, what caused the mother to kill her son, if, and this is my opinion, if she actually did.
Oh, she didn't. Like,
I don't think she did.
100%
I think
alive.
he is too, and I'll tell you who I think he is. I think he's the knight at the end. But that's
what I thought. That's exactly what I thought.
I hope I'm right, because that would be, like, beautiful and lovely to see that, like, her family's not actually completely torn apart. But
Yes.
and also here, like, seeing that note in the trash can, I'm like, what mother? Like, a mother who, like, purposefully killed her child would not, in my opinion, be trying to get a hold of the other children and be like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to kill your brother. Even though, like, the way that was portrayed it was clearly not an accident.
No.
So.
I 100% agree. Actually, going along with the father and the ink of it all, I have a question. What is the gold ink? I'm still confused on what made her bond different than others.
Okay, so green ink is the ink that you typically make when you're contracting people. So essentially, like, if you betray me, it leaks poison into you and you'll die.
Right.
Gold ink is not that at all. So he has been lying, essentially, like, more or less lying to Evie is what I gathered. And the gold ink is not actually similar to the green ink at all. It's actually protection. So he put the little pinky ring on her, and essentially it's, like, telling him, because he has a gold band on his arm. Right. So it's essentially telling him when she's in danger. I would just, like, similarly to, again, like, yeah, like, similar to, I would say, like, Akatar, where theirs is made with a bond, but this is, like, specifically tattooed on them.
Daughter of the moon goddess?
Yeah.
Where they have the little stones.
Yes.
That, like, light up. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it's, like, just telling him, like, oh, she's in trouble. But I guess their bond is so connected that he, like, physically feels her pain, like, when she's in when she's in pain or when she's in danger. And that's why he come running all these times. So.
Okay. Thank you. Because I think I was getting confused with the lies and then the, like, truth reveals.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I couldn't really quite keep up. Which again, kind of like is what I didn't love about this book. I think it was like, it just got very convoluted at the end, which I don't think is, like, a bad thing. I think it honestly, now hearing it back, I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Well, I think it'll lead to a bigger picture eventually, which is the good thing. And I will say, for, like, as far as fantasy books have gone, I don't feel like she didn't, like, obviously she kept some things open, so we're, like, unfulfilled with how this ended because she obviously has a second book. But I don't feel like anything was, like, she didn't skip over anything. She didn't miss anything, if that makes sense. Like, there were no loose ends, unfinished thoughts. I really think she, like, kind of drew everything back in. And if there is anything that hasn't been, like, answered to us, I think, obviously, it clearly will be in the next few books.
Okay, and then my other question. With the masquerade kind of party, I don't think it was actually a masquerade, but it felt like a masquerade party. Yeah, it did. Like, wait, so who sent the invites?
So what I think happened was, I think her dad wrote to Tristan's dad, Alfred. Okay. What's his name? Arthur, yeah. And Alfred? No, Arthur. He, I think, wrote the note to Arthur that was like, I know your son, like, I want to meet you, da-da-da-da. And so then Arthur sent out the invitation to her and to his other associates.
Okay.
So that's what I think that happened. And so I'm assuming also Arthur was the one who had let them know, like, you can release whatever beast creature thing. I don't even know how to say that name, so I'm not going to try.
We can just keep calling him dragon.
The creature. Yeah. The not dragon creature.
The not dragons.
So I guess he, like, had informed whoever to, like, you can get in there and you can release them and just cause all this havoc in the hopes that he would be arrested. But he probably had to go home before he was recognized or something. And he wasn't there to say, like, that's the villain, obviously. So they just assumed it was the Grand Healer because he looked old.
Right. Okay. And he fit that description.
Yeah, and everyone thinks that the villain's old and ugly.
Okay.
Clearly not true.
I know, that was giving me such Flynn Rider vibes, and I was loving every
yes!
second of it. Okay, thank you. Again, clarification. This is why we talk about books, because clarification is everything in this world. I will say it felt like it dragged a little bit toward the end, like in between, like when we find out the reveal, and then it just like it felt like there was like 30 pages in there that probably could have gotten cut out. But I don't know. I feel like I keep saying this about books, so maybe it's a me problem.
You just want to get to the action of it real fast.
Honestly, maybe it's me. Am
I the problem?
Am I the problem? Yes, apparently. But I do want to say, for me, and I blame you for this, I want so much more romance in this.
I know!
I was genuinely surprised because I was like going into this thinking it's a TikTok book. Like, it's literally coming from TikTok's mouth. And it's not smutty.
Do you know what I think? I think she wants like a broader audience, which is great because then she can have like younger people who are on TikTok also read this book without like fear of their parents being like, I don't know why you're reading this. Anyway, I also think it's because, mind you, she's not like, as far as I know, she like didn't go to school for like being a creative writer or something like this. And I think like that's quite a daunting task if you've never written smut before. I'm not saying that she hasn't. But on the off chance that she has never done that, like, it is in fact a daunting task, especially when, like, the bar is so high for so many people, and they're like, oh, well, they're so quick to judge, like, how people write their smut, and it can seem very, like, I guess, like someone who's very innocent writing something like that.
Yeah. Do
I think maybe we'll get a little bit more one day? I don't know. I really don't. I will say, though, the one kissing scene we did get, I was like, okay. Because she did a really good job at explaining, like, how he pulled her close and, like, kind of explaining his thoughts about it. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cute. Like, he's so into this. And he's thinking, like, it's a dream. But it's not. And we're just like, yeah!
Oh, I think that was the smartest decision she ever could have made, was making that kiss scene from his POV.
Right.
Like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm. I would love to hear her, like, more of her POV, but, like, his POV was great. Love it.
Yeah, fair. Which I think, honestly, is why I want to read the second book. Because I feel like there's a lot waiting.
I feel like
in the second book. But then I'm like, will I be sorely disappointed?
Right. I don't think so. But I think, like, she's foreshadowing a lot with the creatures in a very similar way, how they kind of have this bond that, like, if one's in trouble, the other comes running. And I think, like, we're kind of going to possibly see that with Evie in the next book. It's like, Evie's finally, like, she's done. She is to the point where she's like, everyone thinks I'm bad. What has being good ever done for me? I'm sick of it. Like, I found this person who's, like, actually a great person and treats his staff well and, like, is not actually a horrible human being. Whereas all these quote-unquote good guys have been nothing but trash, including my father. Like, really gone out of his way to have me practically sexually assaulted. And, just, she's done. So I think in a very similar way to Miss Creature, I'm going to call her Miss Creature instead of Mr. Creature, she is going to be in a very similar way. She is going to like completely let loose. And she's going to go ham on these people. And I actually cannot wait to see what that looks like for Evie. Because, we know the villain has these powers. But as far as we know, Evie doesn't have any powers. Yeah. I mean, mind you, like I was saying, she could very well obtain powers one day. But as of right now... doesn't. I know. As of right now, she is just Evie. Which is great and amazing and fantastic. But I want to see what just Evie does when it comes to, like, tearing these people apart, trying to get her boss back.
Yes. Yep. Oh, yeah. No, I'm, like, again, very interested in what happens, and I've almost bought the second book so many times. So, like, it might just have to happen. Like, I might just cave and do it, because it's such an original idea, and it's so interesting, and you just want to know, like, what she does with it, and, like, what these characters do, because they're so interesting, and they're so fun. So I think she's got something. And I can't wait to see what happens.
Me too. I'm very excited. I think I'm going to start reading the next one today.
You lucky dog. It might be like a Christmas read, but who knows? Who knows? Well, is there anything else, or should we get into final ratings?
Let's go. Final ratings.
Let's get into final ratings. I gave this book a 3.75 out of 5. And here's why. I think, again, from a book that originated on TikTok, there was a lot. I think I went into this book with different expectations. So I think that's why it maybe veers on the lower end for me. Because I was expecting it to be a lot sexier. I was expecting it to be a lot, like, more of Tristan and Evie. I'm sorry, but, like, one of the other things I just hate, I hate that his name is Tristan. I feel like that's just, like, not like Evie
such
is
a basic guy name.
Yes, Evie is so cute, so fun, and then it's just like Tristan.
But I think, like, that's part of the fun of it, is that like that's such a basic guy name, and you're like this grand villain. His name's actually it's Tristan.
It's Tristan.
It's Tristan.
It's spelled with a Y, so there's a little bit of
like ooh. It's a spicy Tristan.
Little. Oh my gosh. Anyways, it was fine. Like, it was fine. I just think I left the book wanting more kind of everything. And so, like, that is where it kind of docks points. It was like, I wish there was more romance. I think there was more of Kingsley, of course.
Right. Of course. I actually thought he was the villain for a second. I'm not going to lie to you. Or not like the villain, but I thought he was like the one. He was like the traitor. Yeah. Because I was like, this frog can write. Who's to say he's not writing a letter to the king? That's what I thought for a hot sec. So I'm glad I was wrong.
Yeah. I was shook. I 100% was in on Blade. Like, he had all of my money. Like, I would have lost all my money on Blade. That's so funny. But I think it was good. I think I got lost in the sauce a bit, which I tend to do with fantasy books. I feel like that's just like
we always get lost in the sauce. How can you not?
I know. But that's why I talk about these books with you. You help me navigate my way through it. But I think, like, overall premise was so fun. It was so unique. It was so original. I think it read like a book that was written by a first-time author. And so, like, that's where it was a little bit lacking for me. But again, the plot's so good. And, like, I do want to read the second book because I want to know what happens. And these characters are so good. So, like, it was a good book. Like, I'm not saying it's not, but, like, it had enough lacking in it that it has to get below a 4 for me.
I'm here for a good fun time, and so I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. which is like really great. And I think especially for this being someone's first book, I love the characters. And I think like I came into it with different expectations because having like watched her series on TikTok, I think I expected a little bit more innocence. I was hoping for some smut, but again, no fault to like the author. If she wants a wider audience, like I do not snub her for that. And I think even if it doesn't have smut, you don't hear me say this very often, I would definitely like recommend it regardless because it's so good. It's so sweet. It's so much of what you want in a good like romance read. It's to me like a perfect fantasy romance, minus of course we just do want a little bit more spicy, even if it's just more kissing, because I was just like, come on, they need it. They're so repressed for each other, but it's still like having made me like feel these things. I just am like, okay girl, you get my vote.
Yeah, even the bombing scene.
Oh, I know.
Nothing.
Like he could have held her and just like, you okay, Evie?
Yeah. There you go. Damn it. I
was always expecting him to like tuck a little strand of hair behind her. I'm like, why didn't that happen? Okay, anyway.
He was obsessed with her hair.
Exactly. I was just like, just tuck it behind her ear once. Just do it.
Ugh. Anyways, everybody's just drinking for the last 2 minutes.
Like so many uhs.
All right, well, let's get into pairings. So we like to end the show with a segment Pairings, where Sierra and I will pick TV shows, movies, and other books that might pair well with today's book, along with a cocktail, drink, whatever we want. So let's start off with drink. Sarah,
I said like a super sugary latte. Like think the frou-frouiest. I'm thinking pumpkin spice. Like I think he needs it. He would do so well in our world if he had a pumpkin spice latte. I think he might be a little bit happier. Mm-hmm. And especially with the season, pumpkin spice latte. That's what I think.
I love that. I love that so much. I did, well, besides the espresso martini, because I think that fits as well, but on the same line, a mudslide.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like a blended chocolate drink with like Kahlua and some vodka, I think, and some other things. But I think like a very sweet coffee-infused blended drink feels like that fits so well.
Enjoyed by both parties. I can just see them like giggling in his office like while they're drinking this drink.
Yes, I love it.
So cute.
TV show.
I did Gallivant or My Lady Jane. I think both are really fun options. Gallivant being like it's a parody of like Camelot and like all that kind of medieval things, and then My Lady Jane equally, I think, witty. I think in some ways like it's just a very different type of wit. This was more comedy based, whereas like My Lady Jane is like very witty comedy. This one's like sweet, cheesy, and lovely, and that one's just a little bit it's also a book, but just really fun, and I totally enjoyed it, and I'm so mad that Amazon canceled it. So this is my shout out to anyone who has not watched it yet. Please go watch it so that they will bring it back maybe one day, hopefully.
I've heard good things about it. So
Jenna, you have to read it. It's so good.
Okay.
Or read it, watch it. Both. I have the book too. Both.
Amazing. So I did What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
I feel like I recommend this so much. But
yeah,
like,
I think we've recommended this like twice now, but
I know.
It's fine. We love it.
It goes with everything.
It does.
The new season. We'll recommend the new season. But it is that perfect satire of something that's supposed to be super evil and dark and crazy. But you have like everything that is just satirical about being a vampire, and like, what if vampires lived on Staten Island? And like, what would that look like?
New York City.
It is so good. So if you have not watched it, please go watch it. I promise you will not be disappointed.
It's so funny.
All right, book.
Okay, I did The Apprentice to the Villain.
Yes.
Because I think, like, for sure, read the second one. I feel like I couldn't, like, not read the second one now that I've finished the first one and I know it ends on a cliffhanger. I'm like, okay, that was rude. I thought we were going on a different adventure, but no, it's pertaining to the same thing. So I definitely will be reading the second one here shortly. And again, like, My Lady Jane, because it also goes for that one as well. And I think there's a, like, bunch of My Lady somethings from the same author. Like,
there you go.
Like several, or similar to. She does, like, more books than just, like, My Lady Jane.
Okay. Love that. I did Howl's Moving Castle.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you have the villain and just the layperson that fall in love together. And also, like, she works for him. And so it also has that aspect together as well. And so I think it's a perfect pairing. I will say the book is a hot mess express. So I would maybe recommend the movie in over the book. And I think Rebecca would say the same thing. But the book is a wild ride. So if you're looking for a wild ride, I would watch the movie first and then go read the book. Just saying.
There you go.
Okay, movie.
So I have, like, 3.
Love it.
So I did Ella Enchanted.
Oh,
because
so good.
Very similar vibes, I think. And I think that's what I really made me love this book even more, was I really felt like Ella Enchanted, where, like, she's protesting, like, the enslavement of ogres, or I think trolls or ogres or something like that. And I think it's, like, also so very New World problems, but also taking place in, like, old world fairy tale. I think so cute. I also did Princess Bride because it had that satire in it, and just, like, really, really funny moments. And, you know, Dread Pirate Rogers is, like, just her Wesley, and he just makes fun of the fact that she has no clue. And then I also did Men in Tights, which is another one.
Another good one.
All very satirical in nature, and all takes place in a very, like, similar time period-ish, very, like, medieval, with magical creatures, and if not magical creatures, then men dancing in tights.
Oh, those are also good. I had 2, which besides Shrek 2, which I've already mentioned. But my 2 were Descendants.
Okay.
Where you take the look at the sons and daughters of famous villains. I have not watched the new Descendants, so I cannot speak to that one. I hear it's not as good, but 1 and 2 are very good. Comfort movies, maybe.
I love that, Jenna.
I love me some Dove Cameron. And then I also did Megamind, because you have that.
That's so funny. Yes.
You have that idea of the villain and the hero, and then they actually swap with, like, morals and actual values and, like, what is good, what is bad.
Yes.
And I think that is so good.
That's actually such a perfect.
I know.
That's so perfect.
That's, like, all I thought about. I was like, the villain is Megamind. He is. And the fish, like the goldfish.
Oh my god.
It's Kingsley. It's Kingsley. So, just
cute.
saying.
Love. Absolutely love.
All right. So, next up, we are reading The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. I'm really excited to read this because we will be reading it in October, though it comes out in November, the review itself. But it is very spooky, very fun. It's going to be, like, perfect for October. So here is the synopsis. In a shabby house on a shabby street in the new capital of Madrid, Lucia?
Sure.
I'm going to say Lucia Cotado uses scraps of magic to get through her days of endless toil as a scullion. But when her scheming mistress discovers a lump of a servant cowering in the kitchen is actually hiding a talent for little miracles, she demands Lucia use those gifts to better the family's social position. What begins as a simple amusement for a bored nobility takes a perilous turn when Lucia garners the notice of Antonio Perez, the disgraced secretary to Spain's king. Still reeling from the defeat of his armada, the king is desperate for any advantage in the war against England's heretic queen, and Perez will stop at nothing to regain the king's favor. Determined to seize this one chance to better her fortunes, Lucia plunges into a world of seers and alchemists, holy men, and hucksters?
Sure.
There you go, the Nebraska in me said huskers. Hucksters, where the line between magic, science, and fraud is never certain, but as her notoriety grows, so does the danger of her Jewish blood will doom her to the Inquisition's wrath. She will have to use every bit of her wit and will to survive, even if that means enlisting the help of an entitled immortal familiar whose own secrets could prove deadly for them both. After reading the synopsis, do you think you'll recommend it? Yes, no?
I think yes. I'm quick to, like, pretty much recommend so many things. Even if there's, like, been a few that we've done that I would not recommend, but I don't think this will be one of them. Because I'm very into fantasy. I'm very into historical. So,
yeah.
This is just
the sweet spot.
Exactly. It's right there for me.
I don't know. Yes, I think it will. I think I really like this.
I don't know. Yeah.
I want to say yes. I also have I'm like, deep down, I'm like, is this going to be another, like, These Violent Delights? And that I think think it's going to be a sweet spot, and then I don't end up loving it at all. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Alrighty, well, until The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, we will see you next time. Cheers.
Have a spooky Halloween.
Well, that's the show. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked it, please go give it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this episode right now. Leave us a review to tell us what you loved and what books you want us to review next. If you want more book-related content, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at RW Reads Podcast. That's at RWREADSPODCAST at RW Reads Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. Until next week, keep your books open and your drink glasses full. Thanks all. Red Wine Reads is a Just Better Media production. Each episode is produced by Jenna Weston and edited by Rayan Ashtar.